How are you all? So, somewhere I heard about a study, recent study, where in a church service, when the testimonies are powerful, or very many testimonies, good testimonies are there, we need to skip the message or something. Anyway, that study was made in my mind. So, um, today is one such day, no? All uh, great testimonies, and we need time actually to think and ponder about some of those. But then uh, we are having message, so let's go through it. Are you ready? All right. So let's do this. So topic for today is conquering strongholds. All right. So in English there is a word stronghold. So those of you who don't know, let me explain that to you. So pay attention because the entire sermon is about it. If you miss it, then we will lose it, right? So, what is the stronghold? Stronghold is generally referred to a fort, a fortified place. What do you call fort in Telugu? Kota, right? So, it is that kind of a place which is protected from outside attack. It cannot be breached. No outsider can easily enter that place, right? So, a place where a belief or in other terms, right, a place where uh, which is where a particular cause or a belief is strongly defended or upheld is also called a stronghold. For example, how many of you know about the Sentinelese tribe? There is a tribe, there is an island, one of the islands in the group of Andaman and Nicobar Islands is Sentinelese tribe, the North Sentinel uh, Island, where, you know what, nobody has entered so far. Those tribal people, they defend themselves. They have not allowed any modernization, anything to enter there. Whoever tried, there are very many missionaries who tried to go and share gospel, they all were killed. So that's a stronghold. Okay, so that is the literal meaning of stronghold. In spiritual sense, there are strongholds of sins. All right, there are something called strongholds of sins. What does that mean? Anything in our life, right, pay attention, anything in our life, right, which, we are all believers, we are all saved, true, but then there are certain things in our life, certain habits in our life, certain behaviors in our life, certain part of our character, certain addictions or very many things which is actually a hindrance for us to experience that real relationship with God. Anything that is like a stumbling block or anything which is on the path to our relationship God is a stronghold of sin. You're with me? Maybe because of the sinful nature, because of some hardware issues. Yesterday we saw about, because of some hardware issues, mostly because of some software issues. There are certain issues in our life which are strongholds which we try to solve by our own strength and our own strategy and our own power, but then we are not able to breach, we are not able to break that stronghold. Those are strongholds of sin. So we are trying to, you know, breach those, we are trying to conquer those strongholds today. You're with me? We will take that as our application premise on which we will listen to today's message. You are with me? Conquering strongholds is our topic, right? See, for example, if jealousy is one of the strongholds, right? What will happen? Your behavior, you will be anger, you will be envy, you will have bitterness towards somebody else sharing something. You will lack self control, you will be self centered, you will be selfish. All that happens. So, jealousy can be one stronghold. Fear. Many today, Imi opened up with that passage on fear, right? Do not be anxious on anything, is what Paul writes. Because fear is one of those strongholds in many people, right? Because of fear, what happens? Stress increases, you doubt things in your life. Lying is another stronghold. There are very many strongholds. I just listed few. Lying, right? Because of lying, what happens? You become manipulative, you exaggerate things, you hide things. Sometimes it leads to adultery and all that. Lust is another stronghold. Pornography, affairs, outside of marriage relationships, and all that also can cause, right? So these are some of the strongholds. Is this word written in Bible? Yes. We'll turn to quickly 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 3, 4 and 5. That's not our passage for today, but still we'll look at it briefly and then 2 Corinthians chapter 10, 3, 4 and 5. I didn't designate anybody. Can the AV team help me in reading this verses today?
For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but mighty before God to the casting down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that is exalted against the knowledge of God, and bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ.
All right. A quick context for these three verses, right? So, this Corinthian church is one of the hostile churches to Paul. They never, or few of them, never submitted themselves to the authority of Paul, authority or the apostleship of Paul, or never submitted to whatever he was teaching. So, there was always this division and going back and forth. So, in that context, right, he is writing these. His these lines, correct? What he is trying to say is, hey, there are these false teachers and teachings that has intruded the Corinth church, right? So they are questioning or they are doubting Paul's apostleship and his teaching, so they are not submit to God's instructions and teaching. So that is the overarching problem, or the stronghold within that is there within the church, to which Paul is saying, hey, for the weapons of our warfare are not flesh but divine power. So this is a stronghold in the mindsets of the church members in Corinth that Paul is not able to breach. Instead, he is telling that, hey, to breach this uh, strongholds, I am counting on God's divine power, is what he is saying. So this word is not uncommon, it is there. This is one example of a stronghold, right? So with that definition of stronghold, we'll get into today's passage. You're all alive? Yes, keep talking. Joshua chapter 6. So we were going through the series in Joshua. So we will get into Joshua chapter 6, verse 1, the first verse. Now Jericho was shut up inside and outside because of the people of Israel. None went out and none came in. First verse. Now Jericho was shut up inside and outside because of the people of Israel. None went out and none came in. Just a quick context. Where are the Israelites now? Geographically, they are just outside of Jericho. So they had this big wilderness journey, and Jericho is a city in the eastern part of Israel. They are entering the promised land. This is the first time they are entering. There was this Jordan River. God led them, miraculously stopped the water. They all walked in through that Jordan River. They camped at Gilgal, and now they are at Jericho. Right? That is where. Spiritually, where are they? Anybody paying attention? They were top of spiritual life or low in spiritual life at this point of time? They are top in their spiritual life, right? They saw the miraculous parting of the Jordan River, and then they camped at Gilgal. What God did? God reminded them of the covenant He made with Abraham and made them all circumcised, because they never did that all through their wilderness. And all these men who are there, they were all born in the wilderness, or they were all very small when they started the journey, right? So God made them remind of that covenant, made them circumcised. Second, what happened? He enabled them to celebrate Passover. What is Passover? Passover is remembering God's salvation through that blood of the lamb. So they were reminded of that as well. right? So they were spiritually high. They want to go and attack. They want to go and get the land. So God consecrated them. He prepared them, and now they are up for the next challenge. What is the next challenge? Next challenge is to go and occupy the promised land. Problem is there are people inside, right? So the first challenge is this big Jericho city. What do we know about Jericho city? So it's a fortified city. It's a stronghold in the sense, in the physical sense that it's a stronghold. It's a fortified city. It is one of the oldest cities in history, right? It's one of the oldest cities. 20th century, evacuations, um, not evacuations. What is it? Excavations. Um, it happens. So this excavations, right, it found out that whatever we read, there were like big walls buried under the this thing and all that. So what they all found out, right, this walls, there are like this two layered walls, right? There is one inner outer wall, and then there is this inner wall. This outer wall is almost 23 feet high and 6 feet thick. That is the outer wall. And then there is this inner wall which is 30 feet high, 12 feet thick. Don't worry about dimensions. Bottom line, two layers of wall, and in between is the natural rock or the mountains of that region. The width of that varied from 12 to 20 feet. So you can imagine, right? See, I was born and brought up in a place where we built nuclear reactors. Nuclear reactors had those thick, safe walls that radiations won't come out. So this is even more fortified, even more secure than a nuclear reactor ka wall. You understand, right? So that big two-layer wall with watchtowers and all that kind of a secured wall is what we are saying. What is the challenge? In those days, if you want to breach that wall, if you want to go inside, big armies will come, and then they will bulldoze the wall. They will bulldoze the wall, they'll put tunnel and all that. But unfortunately, these Israelites, they were all these 40 years, they were in that wilderness. They don't have the know-how, they don't have the JCBs and other powerful tools to make tunnels, right? Another way they used to breach is they'll just sit outside for months together, so that no supplies will go, nobody can go in, come out, so the people inside will starve to death. So these are the two. But both these methods are not practical for Israelites at this point of time, because one, they don't have ammunition, they don't have that kind of weapons. Second, they don't have that kind of time. We don't know what will happen. These people may also starve, right? So in that scenario, what is going to happen is what we are going to see, right? Now, another question which came to my mind: how many people Israelites should be? Millions, 2 million or something. And this is a very, in fact, the square feet of this is 430,000, which is not a very big area. Square feet, 430,000 square feet. Okay, it must be what, like some 10 football ground or something, not more than that. All right. So now there is this 40. They are not attacking. Are they attacking? They are not attacking. They themselves are scared of these people. They are scared of these people. You know, right? Joshua chapter 2, when we read, we came to know through Rahab that people are all fearing. We heard about the God who parted the Red Sea and all that. So they are all inside the fortified city. Now, should they even break open this fort? They can ignore this and keep going, right? You're with me? They can ignore this. They are not harming. Ignore it and keep moving. And their work is to occupy the land. Rest of the land is, they could have done that, right? Am I talking sense? Why they had to break their head on breaking the walls? Many times we also think like that, no? There is that small sin in our life. It comes and goes. One stronghold, it's okay. I am anyway serving the Lord. I am anyway running for the Lord. I am anyway that and this. Can we ignore and go? Is one thought, right? Now, why they have to? What is their mission? The mission is to clear the land where all these Gentiles are living, and then they occupy the entire land. Is the mission God has given, or the promise God has given to these people? You're all with me? So when God is saying, go and occupy the land of Canaan, it means uproot all the people, destroy them, is the command God has given. Now, if they leave some people, they are going to, now they are in their stronghold. Tomorrow they'll come back and attack these people. That is what happened in the history of Israel also. They left some people here and there who came back, who intermingled, and led them astray in paths of destructions. That is the history. So for us also, right, um, it's important that we deal with the strongholds and not ignore them in life. All right? Mission is to breach this wall and conquer the people. Deal with it now, else they may come back stronger. I just heard one story. We'll come to that story later. Anyway, first point, right? We'll get into verse 2. Chapter 6, verse 2 to 7. So we're running out of time. So I wouldn't read any verse today because we are going to cover the entire chapter 6 of Joshua. So we won't have time to, and I'm not going to do a verse by verse breaking or anything. So it's okay. Most of you may know the story. I will give a summary of what is happening in each of those passages, and then we'll learn few things and we'll close. Okay. So verse 2 onwards, God starts giving uh, instructions. Do this, do that. All right. Before that, there is 3 verses. I want to focus on that. That will surely read. If you remember last time we completed at verse 12 of chapter 5. Verse 12 of chapter 5. There is 13, 14 and 15. Those of you who never or didn't know these 3 verses, pay attention. Certain fascinating things are coming here. Can one of you read that? Chapter 5, last 3 verses. 13, 14, 15.
When Joshua was by Jericho, he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man stood in front of him with his sword drawn in his hand. Joshua went to him and said to him, Are you for us, or are you for our enemies? He said, No, but I have come now as commander of Yahweh's army. Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped and asked him, What does my Lord say to his servant?
Right.
The prince of Yahweh's army said to Joshua, Take off your sandals, for the place on which you stand is holy. Joshua did so.
Okay. So, verse 13, there is all of a sudden, there is a man who is standing with a sword taken. And then, with all this interaction, we know that obviously this is some manifestation of God himself. And this is not the first time that happened in history. You all remember, right? Abraham and Sarah also were met by men from God. And when Jacob wrestled with God, it was a physical man, right? So now, definitely, this is a human manifestation of God, and this is not the first time. And many claim this to be Jesus in his pre-incarnated state. Okay, it may be true, maybe some other form in which God came and visited. So that is not what I am interested in. Okay, and nothing is clear whether it is Jesus or not. So I am not going to debate on that. What matters or what fascinated was verse 14. Verse 14. Or what Joshua is asking is, are you for us or for our adversaries? Since the man was standing with sword, he is asking, are you from the Canaanites or from the Jericho people, or you belong to us? It was a simple question. What Is the Lord answering? He should have told yes. It's Lord himself. He came to give instructions to Joshua. He should have told, yes, I am in your side only. What is he saying? No. NIV says neither. Correct? How do we understand this? It is God himself, and he continues to instruct Joshua, but then he is saying neither. If Joshua would have asked, what Joshua asked, are you in our side? If Joshua would have asked, are we on your side? What the Lord would have answered? You get the difference? See, many a times we want God to be in our side. There is a subtle difference. There is a big difference. God is reminding him and them about their dependencies on self versus God. God is reminding us as well that our dependence on ourselves versus our dependence on Him. God is expecting us to submit both ourselves and our battles to Him. And how He is referring Himself? I am the commander of the army of the Lord. I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Who is the commander of the army of the Lord? Who is the commander in any army? He is the captain. He is the leader. He is the one who instructs. He is the one who directs. He is the one who guides. He is the one who devises strategy. He is the one who faces the enemies up front. Many times what happens, we are the commander and we ask God, will you join my troop? Right? That is what God, that one subtle neither is powerful there. Submit is the first point, right? Submit to the commander is what I have written. God is expecting us to submit both ourselves and our battles to the commander, to the commands of the commander. If you believe battle belongs to the Lord, submit yourself and your battles to Him, right? Now we'll move on. Verses 2 to 7. 2 to 7, he gives instructions, right? What is the instructions? You're all with me? I know, lunchtime. Stay with me. Instructions are very simple. People will march around the city of Jericho 7 days. How they will go? The first armed men will go, then 7 priests with their horn, ram horn, they will go, followed by ark of the Lord, and then followed by unarmed men. All of them will go 1 round per day for 6 days. 7th day they'll do 7 rounds, and the last round the trumpet will be blown high and people have to shout and the walls will fall. Right? That was the instruction. What do you think about this military strategy? Let's say you are in the position of Joshua. Who is Joshua? Joshua is a warrior, you know, right? He is a bold man, brave man. He has handled, you remember that Amalekite war under the leadership of Moses. Moses was standing up with his arms, and then the real man who was fighting on the floor was Joshua. Now, to Joshua, Lord is saying, no blood, no sword, nothing, no strategy. This is what you have to keep blowing the horn and shout. How illogical that would have sounded to Joshua, correct? Because God's ways are different, my dear friends. God's ways are different. So now I'm not going to interpret what that horn means, what that 7 days means, why this round and all that. Okay, that is immaterial. We can't find meaning for all that. We will end up in trouble, right? So instead, we'll learn some of these overarching principles there, right? There are why this kind of illogical instructions? Maybe It's a test of faith to both Joshua and his people, whether they are believing, whether they are accepting this kind of an illogical um, instruction. Maybe God wants to deal with the pride of Joshua. He might have thought, like, hey, one after another success is going to come. In my name, victory. Deep down, that may happen, right? So maybe God is trying to deal with um, pride. Many times, see, I got reminded of my own story, right? Long back, we used to, in the student ministry, I used to, bring friends to meeting. So there will be other student leaders, but when we bring many people to a meeting, a gospel meeting or a believers meeting or whatever, right? Then these annas and akkas will, hey, appreciate you, no? Hey, good job, you brought 20 people. Somebody didn't bring much. So that builds on you. Over the period of time, that pride builds on you. And you tend to think that you are, because of you only, the ministry is running. I was very young at that, young in uh, faith at that time. Didn't know all these things. I was just riding the wave. God taught me. Eventually, the mojo left. Nobody used to come. I used to get so anxious. I'll be waiting at that. And these are before WhatsApp, before phone days, right? I called him, I sent him messages, why he's not coming. I used to wait. Nobody will come. That's when seniors helped me to figure out that, boss, it's not the quantity, it's not the how many people you bring, with what motive you bring. The motive was self glorification. So from then on, I realized this is God's business. You have to participate in his motive, not in your agenda. Understand? Maybe God wants to deal with that kind of a pride with the people because they just received one success from the Jordan River. So maybe he's dealing. That's why um, his ways are different, right? God's timing is different, right? Why 7 days? It could be first day itself, no? First day itself, walk 7 times, close it. Or if God anyway decided to, second verse he says, no, I have given Jericho. Then give, no? Just one command, Linux command, done. Why all these things? Because there is time involved. Very happy to see Nandana here. We used to debate, is it Nandana or Vandana and all. Now that confusion is coming in the. Her battle is long term. It's not instant. God has given her everything, but then her battle to bring her family to get their approval is a long battle. God's ways are different, my dear friends. God's timing is different. You need not always expect, instant answers. The stronghold you are trying to conquer, maybe God wants to deal with your pride and submit to his timing. You understand? Let's apply that to our own strongholds, no? His ways may be different. God's weapons are different. Just now we read what Paul told, right? Weapons of our warfare are not the flesh, but have the divine power to destroy strongholds. Many times when we say that, hey, go and pray. Now Christians keep hearing that word, go and pray, right? We take it for granted. But believe me, there is power in prayer. Believe me, that works. Maybe that prayer is that illogical instruction God is giving you. Anna, I am addicted with these things. Pray. Find prayer partners. Sit with them. Pray. Not just for 7 days, 70 days, 700 days. You never know. Continue doing that. God will deliver you. So God's ways are different. We'll move on to the so verses from 2 to 7, this is the instruction God is giving. And from 8 to 19, I am calling it as obedience. Obedience. Why I am saying that? If you read it, they have obeyed, they have literally did it. People could have thought, right? Hey, why should I walk? This doesn't make sense. You remember the same Israelites, not the same Israelites, the parents of these Israelites. They used to rebel. Hey, I won't do this. Why should we do that? We don't have chicken. We don't have biryani. All that. You remember that complaining generation, right? Instead, these people, what did they do? They obeyed. I can read verse 8 and 9. And just as Joshua had commanded the people, the seven priests bearing the seven trumpets of ram's horn before the Lord went forward, blowing the trumpets with the ark of the covenant of the Lord following them. They went forward. They did exactly, if you read each of those verses, right, they did exactly what was instructed. There was no deviation from left or to the right. There was no delay. There was no procrastination. There was no objection. There was no rebellion. When God said something, they obeyed. Obedience, my dear friends, is the third point. It is very important in our lives also. How many messages you would have heard? How many times you yourself would have read the Bible, studied the Bible, memorized the verses? God has given you instructions, teachings through all that. How many times were we obedient to that? God is calling you to be obedient to those tough calls. Stand for Him. Is the reminder God is giving. To break those strongholds in your own life, be obedient to His word. And we'll move on to, we skipped a big portion. Please read at home. We'll go to verse 20. Verse 20 is the climax verse. So the people shouted, and the trumpets were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of trumpet, the people shouted a great shout, and the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him. They captured the city. They just shouted, and the walls fell down. Why did the wall fell down? Because they shouted aloud? Because God has given them. Can you turn to Hebrews chapter 11 and 30, verse 30? Hebrews.
By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days.
So, what component we are noting here? Faith. By faith. Till now, I know you're all scholars in this chapter by now, right? Um, till now, who are all the people? All these great um, men of faith, right? Abraham, Abel, Enoch, all those great men are there. But here it is commended to whom? What? The entire nation. Look at their level of faith. Look at what inspiration they, when they were together, what all we can achieve, right? It is that faith. It is that excellence they showed in their faith, which actually brought the downfall, right? How is your faith, right? Do you believe God can solve your problem? We believe God can save you. We all believe, right? God saved me. But can God really solve some of the strongholds in your life? God is asking us to excel in that faith. Put that trust, continue that trust. And then verses, back to Joshua chapter 6, verses 21 to 27. What happens? God exalted the faithful. That's the topic I'm giving. God who exalts the faithful. Two things happens. One, Rahab. You all remember Rahab, right? So this entire city was destroyed, but then as God made deal with her, as his people made deal with her in the past, they rescued her because she put her trust on the Lord. She feared him. She believed him. As an act of faith, she hid those spies. So she was rescued, right? God is a faithful God. Whatever he promised, whatever covenant he made, he will keep. He's a covenant keeping God. God exalted Rahab from shame to fame, right? From we I think we our message title the other day was Hall of Shame to Hall of Faith. Hall of Shame to Hall of Faith. That was that one faith she had in the Lord brought her that far, and he put her in the list, in the genealogy list of Jesus Christ, right? A prostitute is, that much is the grace of God, that much is the power of God in transforming people. Anyway, here he exalted her for that faith. He rescued. Similarly, verse 28. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame was in all the land. God exalted Joshua as well, right? He exalts when you are faithful, when you are obedient. So, my dear friends, I just want to recap, right? Submit your challenges, submit your problems, submit your strongholds of sin to the commander. And God's ways are different. Identify those God's ways. Here it is all about 7 days. It's all about walking around. Maybe in your case it is different. Maybe He's asking you to read the scriptures more. Maybe it is all about consistent prayer. Maybe excelling in that prayer. Maybe obedience. Obey His commandments. Give pay attention to His instructions and obey. Whatever you are purposefully stonewalling, stop it and obey. Excel in that faith. God who exalts, and He will exalt you as well for this faith and obedience, and the confidence you have in Him will bring fruit. Those strongholds will be breached. I had a friend back in the day, a close friend. Both of us were growing Christians. Even now we are growing. Very great guy in faith, right? He shares the word well. He shares the gospel to many people, conducts big programs, stage performance, he does well, and all that. He had a slight weakness. He had a slight weakness for girls, flirting, talking to them over phone in the night. That small weakness nobody else knew. Since I was close to him, I alone knew. And then there was a point where he's like, hey, what is a big deal? But then it started affecting his spiritual walk. And then we both used to pray for it. That used, on his behalf, we both, that was the, stronghold to breach is what we kept as a target for 1 year or so. He will stop, and he had a lot of fan followings. That is also there because of all the stage performances and other things. But still, the Lord's instruction for us is to keep praying. And we kept doing that, and slowly he could come out of. It's not relationship or anything. Understand? This is like behind the back, hidden, talking with multiple people. Just time gets wasted and unwanted things. So that one weakness, that one stronghold, God helped me to recognize how prayer can solve problems. And now he is well, he's married, happily settled, and doing good. So that weakness of his, that stronghold is removed, and his marriage is also successful now. So, my dear friends, don't give up on the strongholds. When God led the Israelites, He is leading you also. That man with the sword on, that man is there for us also. All that we need to do is submit ourselves to His command, submit ourselves to His instructions and commandments through the Word of God. Shall we pray?